My neighbor across the street came one day and asked me if I wanted his beehive, and I said yes. I had no clue at that time what I was getting into, but that's how I started keeping bees. When you go into a hive, you open it up and you become so focused on the bees, on the comb, on the honey, on all of that, you just totally forget about what is around you. And yes, you get stung, you feel it, but you don't really pay attention to those type of things at times. Nectar and then honey contain all the essences of the flowers, of the plants that have produced the nectar. So it is really a reflection, a picture of the environment around the hives. How do we eat honey? Very simply, by the spoon, spread on bread, mixed with yogurt, in teas, in coffee. You give to the bees, you try to understand them. The bees have a way actually of showing you things, but they are clues that you have to pick. You have to really want to see them. If a burglar comes into your home and well, you're not going to stay quiet and do nothing. You're going to defend yourself. The bees do the same thing. They defend themselves, and their ways of doing that is by stinging somebody who aggresses them. Remove the stinger is the first thing to do. Next thing is to, if possible, put some cold water or some ice on the sting if you want to. Get to the point where I don't do anything. I love the bees. I really appreciate what they do for all of us. And I think I have a great deal of respect, at least I hope I have a great deal of respect for the bees. If you look at the data collected by USDA over the past 60 years, you will see that 60 years ago we had in the country 6 million managed bee colonies. Nowadays we barely have 2 million, 1/3 of that. In the meantime, our human population in the country has doubled. So to satisfy the pollination need for our food crops, our bees are asked to work 6 times as much. On top of that, native pollinators have been decimated. It is such that we have to import bees from other countries, and we should avoid that as much as possible. This is dramatic, actually. If the trend that is shown there is not curbed whatsoever, by 2035, to 27 years from now, there will not be a managed bee colony in the US. Where will the pollination service come from? There will be several possibilities. One will be the Africanized bees will spread. The Africanized bees are not bees that you really want to manage and have near your home, for example, but we have very little control over that if we have any. There are several things that we should be doing to correct this type of problem. First, we should recreate habitat that has been destroyed that would support pollinators and honeybees so that we don't have to rely on so many foreign bees, for one thing. We need to also increase the local bee population and give it some strength. Those are probably the 2 main aspects of farming and beekeeping that we should address. These 2 colonies are very young colonies. I just started them a few days ago, and they are grooming a queen. This area here is honey that has been sealed. It's ripe. This one is in the making, so you can see it's shiny. It's a nectar that is concentrated. You see those colorful cells here? That's pollen. Here you have a drone, one of the males. The drones don't have a stinger. They have big eyes. They are loud. And the rest, most of them are worker bees, female. Here is a bee that is carrying some pollen pellets, which is a good sign in the colony, because that means that they are preparing to raise some brood. When we go through a hive and we see that the bees have produced more honey than what they will need, then that excess of honey, which we call surplus honey, is what we can harvest. And that's the only honey that we should be harvesting, not what the bees will need. When the entire frame is like this, or most of it, that's when we can harvest it. Okay.
Yeah.
You can see that light spring honey running. Okay. I personally prefer the summer honeys. They are stronger, darker. But this is nice. Boy, this is nice. I believe that honey is a very good medicine. It's a good wound dressing. Applied onto burned area, it can help and accelerate healing. Some surgeons are using it in place of antibacterial wound dressing with great success, and actually healing seems to be accelerated. When you eat honey from a given area, you're also taking in very small amounts of pollen. And some people say that it is almost like vaccination against the pollen. So people that have allergy to pollen can take the local honey and protect themselves from the allergic reaction to the pollen. Colony collapse disorder apparently started in the fall of 2006. It became really obvious during the winter of 2006-2007. Bee colonies that one day were very strong, very healthy, a few weeks later essentially died, lost their bees entirely. And what was really surprising that inside the hives where those bees were, there were still a lot of honey, a lot of nectar, sometimes the queen and a handful of bees. Normally, when that happens, other bees would come and try to rob the honey out of these weak hives. In this particular case, other bees didn't want to even enter. Some beekeepers lost very large quantities of beehives very, very quickly, some of them losing as many as 80% of their apiaries. Just about everybody now agrees that it's a combination of several factors. One of them being the massive use of systemic pesticides. That means that regardless of how they are applied to the soil, to the seed, to the plant by foliage spray or whatever, those pesticides go into the entire plant. And when the bees collect nectar and pollen, their nervous system is affected and they become disoriented and they don't know how to go back to their hives, so they get lost and the hive population gets depleted. Another factor is the loss of habitat and poor nutrition that ensues combined with the 2 or even 3 poor seasons that we've seen recently. How to correct it? The only thing that we can say at this point is make sure that the equipment and especially the combs that are found in a colony that suffered from colony collapse disorder are not transferred into another colony, because then the syndrome is contagious. And as much as possible, staying away from the areas where those new pesticides are applied. And otherwise, how to correct it, nobody knows really. You don't need to have a lot of acreage. I know some people that are keeping beehives on their balcony. People that keep hives in cities make more honey than the people that keep hives in the country, because you have so many ornamental plants that are watered, irrigated by people, that actually there is a lot of nectar to be collected in cities. When the bees want to sting you, usually they will try to go to the face. So protecting the face is very important. When you first came in, like you had a black t-shirt, not a very good idea around beehives. The bees will associate you with their number one enemy, so they will want to go after you in that case. You lose a lot of the dexterity, and manipulating frames or hive tools and with gloves actually is very difficult. It's much better to be able to feel when you are putting a finger on a bee and release the pressure so that you don't squish the bee. They have to have enough space, enough volume in the hive, but not overwhelming, because that would become stressful on the colony. Another mistake is to go into the beehives too often. I go into my beehives as little as possible. It's only when it's needed. I believe it's very important, as long as we are beekeepers, to make sure that the bees are kept in good, sound equipment that satisfy their needs. And not all the beehives are, unfortunately, not all of them are designed to do that. Honey lasts for a long time. Honey has been found in Egyptian tombs that was 4,000 years old, and it was still edible. Was it good? I don't know. I didn't taste it, but it was still edible. In our kitchen, we keep some on the table all the time. Otherwise, we keep it in jars in the pantry when we have some. It's preferable to keep honey in the dark, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary to even refrigerate it. Honey will have a tendency to crystallize. It forms crystals and it hardens. It's normal. Honey that does not crystallize in most cases is that way because it has been heated during its processing, and which has destroyed a lot of the essences, flavors that it contained. So having a honey that is crystallized or crystallizing could be a gauge of good quality. Some people add it, do some fancy recipes with it. It's a really good cooking ingredient, but I like it just plain honey.